January 1st, 1956, the day Sudan became independent, a new chapter began for the nation. People believed this date would change everything. Even the Nile seemed happy, flowing with calm and pride. Its waters reflected the bright dreams of the country. The river looked like it was a blessing. It was blessing Sudan's new beginning. Homes were filled with excitement and celebration. Families decorated their houses with hope and joy. Every home felt like a small light shining for the future. The people dreamed of freedom, unity, and peace. They believed democracy would bring a better tomorrow. Their hearts were full of trust in their new nation. But hopes were just hopes. And slowly, everything turned the opposite way. Far from the world's headlines, across the burning sands of Africa, a war rages on. A war that has torn apart one of the continent's largest nations. This is Sudan. A war the world forgot, but one that refuses to be silent. Sudan's story did not begin with the tanks in Khartoum. It began decades earlier, with borders drawn by foreign powers, dividing tribes, stretching loyalty. For years, Sudan lived under the rule of Omar al-Bashir, a man whose iron grip held the country together even as deep cracks spread beneath the surface. But in 2019, the people rose. Protesters filled the street, demanding freedom, dignity, and change. Finally, Bashir fell, and the world hoped Sudan had stepped into a new dawn. To understand the war, we must go back to the deserts of Darfur. In the early 2000s, rebellion spread in the west. To crush it, the government armed tribal fighters, the feared Janjaweed. Villages burned, thousands fled. The world witnessed atrocities, but few understood how these militias would reshape Sudan's future. By 2013, Bashir transformed these fighters into an official paramilitary force, the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, and at its head he placed Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemeti. Hemeti was no ordinary commander. Born among desert camel traders, he rose through conflict, building an army loyal to him. RSF grew into a force that rivaled Sudan's own army, a state within a state. RSF fighters were paid well, armed heavily, and backed by gold mines and powerful foreign deals. Hemeti's name echoed through Sudan's streets, not for leadership, but for the corruption spewed behind the closed doors. People spoke of wealth rising from the blood and sand while the nation fell deeper into the misery. Facing Hemeti was General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the head of the Sudanese armed forces. Burhan represented the traditional military old institutions, national pride, decades of discipline. Together, Burhan and Hemeti overthrew Bashir. Together they promised democracy, but two men cannot share one throne, and Sudan's throne was soaked in history, power, and fear. Two powerful generals, but history has room for only one. And when ambition becomes a battlefield, only one general walks out. On April 15, 2023, the sky over Khartoum erupted. Jet engines roared, explosions shattered the morning calm. RSF and the army clashed for the control of the capital. Streets became war zones, families hid in the dark rooms as bullets tore through walls. Hospitals collapsed under fire. Khartoum, a city once alive with culture, trade, and youth, became a battlefield of smoke and broken dreams. But the war did not stop in the capital. It spread west towards Darfur, a region already scared by the past. Entire villages were erased, communities vanished into the desert. Ethnic tensions were ignited, and old ones were raped once again. In town after town, silence replaced life. In Sudan, every explosion shatters more than walls. It shatters the silence people pray to keep. Mothers run with children in their arms, not knowing which direction is safer, only which direction is not burning. The ground trembles, but the hearts of people tremble more, afraid of what comes after the blast. Smoke rises like a warning to the sky, telling the world what the world refuses to see. And in every fearful face, you can read the same question: will we survive the next explosion? As the world turned its eyes to other conflicts, Sudan's suffering struggled to break through the noise. Millions fled across borders into Chad, Egypt, South Sudan. Families walked for days without food or water. Children disappeared in the chaos. A humanitarian crisis grew, but the world rarely saw it. Inside Sudan, life collapsed. Schools shut down. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Markets emptied. Electricity vanished. Once busy neighborhoods became ghost towns, guarded by snipers and shadows. And through it all, two generals fought, each claiming to save the nation, even as the nation bled. Yet, beneath the rubble, hope flickers. Ordinary Sudanese doctors treating patients in the dark, volunteers delivering food, neighbors sheltering neighbors, keep the heartbeat of their country alive. Their courage is the quiet resistance that no general can command and no bullet can kill. Tonight, Sudan stands at a crossroads. The war shows no sign of ending. International pressure shifts, alliances change, promises break, and the future grows more uncertain by the day. Which general will seize the control? Who will shape the next chapter of this wounded nation? And will the world finally pay attention before it is too late? The final chapter of Sudan's war has not been written. The battle for power continues, but so does the fight for survival. Somewhere along the Nile, the sun sets over broken streets and burned homes, but also over people who refuse to give up. This is not just war of armies, it is a war of stories, a war of silence, a war of a nation crying out to be heard. And until the world listens, Sudan's struggle goes on. And so Sudan stands at a crossroads. between the ruins of war and hope of tomorrow, a land rich in history, but wounded by those who sought power over peace. Its people, scattered yet unbroken, still carry the strength of generations. Every destroyed home tells a story of a dream that refused to die. Every silent street waits for the laughter that once filled it. The world may look away, but Sudan's pain remains real, beating like a forgotten drum. But within that silence, a new voice is rising, a voice demanding justice, a voice calling for unity, a voice calling for dignity, a voice calling for survival, because no war can erase the soul of a nation that refuses to surrender. The world sees only what the media chooses to show, and Sudan is barely a headline. Behind every blackout, there is a truth someone wants to hide. While cities collapse and families flee, the cameras remain pointed elsewhere. Stories of pain, strength, and survival disappear into silence. The cries of millions are reduced to a sentence at the bottom of a screen. But silence doesn't mean peace. It only means the world is not listening. I repeat, the world is not listening. In the shadows where the media will not look, real people are fighting to stay alive. Their suffering is not invisible, it is ignored. And so it becomes our duty to show what others refuse to show. Because if the world cannot see Sudan, then we must become its voice. A nation once full of life is now fighting just to survive. Children are starving, families are displaced, and entire cities are disappearing into silence. The world cannot pretend it doesn't see this anymore. Sudan needs food. Sudan needs medicine. Sudan needs protection. And Sudan needs a voice. Your voice. Every share, every donation, every word spoken can save a life. This is not just a crisis. It is a plea for humanity. Please stand with Sudan before more lives fade into the darkness. This is not the end of Sudan's story. It is the beginning of its fight to rise again.